It's difficult to know precisely when Orwell first took an informed interest in Soviet affairs. When in Spain, he was said to know nothing of communism. Yet, 10 years earlier in Paris, according to Louis Vanier, who with Eugène Adam was involved in the October Revolution in Petrograd in 1917, Orwell would argue noisily with both of them, Orwell arguing, advocating communism, something their experiences in Russia had made them reject. In letters recently published in The Life in Letters, Orwell offers 1932 and 1935 as years he became intermittently interested in communism. In 1938, in his review of Assignment in Utopia by Eugene Lyons, Orwell asks, "The truth about Stalin's regime, if we could get hold of it, is of the first importance. Is it socialism, or is it a particularly vicious form of state capitalism?" This book, Lyons' Assignment in Utopia, is one probable source of the anti-scientific equation 2 + 2 = 5, i.e. the 5-year plan to be completed in 4 years, set up in lights in Moscow and other major cities. Orwell might have known it, of course, from Tristram Shandy or even from Dostoevsky's Notes from Underground. It's all difficult to sometimes pin down just what influenced what. Orwell's review of Arthur Koestler's Darkness at Noon in 1941 is indicative not only of his reading in this field, but of his contempt for the eagerness of Western intellectuals to justify the Moscow trials and to accept the confessions of the accused. Orwell gets to the heart of what is at issue in the Soviet state. Rubashov, he says, Rubashov with the composite picture of Bukharin and Trotsky, Rubashov is charged with incredible crimes, denies everything, and is shot in the back of the neck. The story ends with a young girl in whose house Rubashov had once lodged, wondering whether to denounce her father to the secret police as a way of securing a flat for herself and her future husband. It was one thing for Orwell to recreate the political life of Soviet Russia in Animal Farm. What Orwell also achieved was to recreate its tone of life without ever having been there. Lior Savchenko, when he wrote from occupied Germany asking Orwell to allow a Ukrainian translation, graphically describes the reaction of the Ukrainian displaced persons to whom he read Animal Farm, translating into Ukrainian as he went. The effect was striking, writes Savchenko. They approved of almost all your interpretations. They were profoundly affected by such scenes as that of animals singing Beasts of England on the hill. Here I saw that in spite of their attention being privately drawn on detecting concordances, and I can come back to this in a moment, concordances between the reality they lived in and the tale, they were vividly reacting to the absolute values of the book. The book seems to correspond with their actual state of mind, That's the Ukrainian edition, I think, coming up, there it is. Very tattered, I'm afraid, very, very delicate, I'm afraid, that. The sad face of this translation, which of course Orwell approved, he never ever took royalties from those who were under any oppressive regime, incidentally. The sad face of this translation is that most of the copies were seized by the Americans in Germany and given to the Soviets, who were then their allies. Savchenko later became professor of Byzantine studies at Harvard. He's still alive, and what I rather like is he shares the same hobby as Orwell, fishing. That those in the West were less perceptive than those Ukrainian displaced persons is well attested. T.S. Eliot notoriously missed the point. He concluded that as the pigs were more intelligent than the other animals, what was needed was not more communism, but more public-spirited pigs. And he turned down Animal Farm, just as he had turned down Down and Out in Paris and London. Even the politically astute Dwight MacDonald asked for an explanation. He didn't understand the book. In his response, Orwell wrote, "I meant the moral to be that revolutions only affect a radical improvement when the masses are alert and know how to chuck out their leaders as soon as the latter have done their job. The turning point of the story was supposed to be when the pigs kept the milk and the apples for themselves. For his radio adaptation in 1946, Orwell added 4 short speeches to stress this turning point. I'm sure you won't be surprised to know the BBC cut them out. Nothing changes. Most of many of the translations of Animal Farm in Orwell's lifetime were completed without incident. However, only the British and the Telugu Indian editions retained Orwell's subtitle, A Fairy Story. That puzzled publishers all around the world, especially in America. French communists made publishing a translation in France impossible, so that the publication took place in Monaco. The title was to be capital letters URSA, Ursa the Bear. The letters stood for Union des Républiques Socialistes Animales. That was thought too provocative, so it was replaced by the innocuous Les Animaux Partout, Animals Everywhere. Let me turn to 1984, and I shall concentrate on its scientific origins, because I think these are sometimes not given full weight. One of the problems in assessing a starting point for the actual writing of a novel is the significance of what is called Bakerism. Orwell uses the same word. From what a young scholar, or a science scholar, Ralph Desmarais told me, in my collection, The Lost Orwell, it was clear that hearing John Baker speak at the Penn Conference in August 1944, and particularly of the role of Trofim Denisovich Lysenko, were very significant in prompting Orwell to start writing. Why Lysenko? Orwell had been very interested in science from his childhood, first at St Cyprian's, called it nature study, rather deprecatingly now perhaps. And Sir Roger Miners recalled how at Eton, Orwell developed a passion for biology and got permission to do extra dissections in the biology laboratory. Right, there you are. Orwell and his catapult. He was a very fine shot with a rifle. Don't believe what he tells you in his books. He was also a very fine shot with a catapult. Not fashionable, I suppose, today. One day, Orwell brought down a jackdaw, perched on the roof of the college chapel at Eton. You can think how high that was. He and Miners took the jackdaw to the laboratory to dissect it. Miners writes, "We made a great mistake of slitting the gallbladder and therefore flooding the place with, well, it was an awful mess." In his Penn lecture, that by the way is Orwell practicing with his catapult in Morocco. In his Penn lecture, Baker referred to Lysenko and his appointment as an academician and director of the Soviet Academy of Agricultural Science. Lysenko rejected traditional hybridization and believed that he could change wheat into rye, amongst other things. Stalin backed his approach to such a degree that opposition to Lysenko and his theories was actually outlawed, made illegal, in 1948. Those who disagreed with him were sent to a gulag, and that 3,000 biologists were sacked. Baker concluded his talk by arguing that the case of Lysenko provides a vivid illustration of the degradation of science under a utilitarian regime. And it was this degradation of science that provoked Orwell into writing, getting onto the writing of 1984. And Orwell never lost his interest in Lysenko. Only a month before he died, he pasted a cutting from the News Chronicle into his last literary notebook. This quoted Lysenko maintaining wheat can be made into rye. Lysenko, of course, failed completely. Many people suffered, many died as a result, but he was only discredited in the USSR in 1964.